Hello everyone. Today we will define and differentiate insight and intuition, two of our most used and potent unconscious processes. And by the end of the video, you'll be able to determine which one you use more. And so let's jump right away with insight, which is more important and useful out of the two for problem solving. So there are actually two definitions of insight we're going to cover. The first definition is your depth and clarity of understanding. So for example, when I say Hannibal Lecter has tremendous insight of human nature, I'm referring to the quality of his comprehension, the accuracy and the depth of his understanding of human nature. Now, the second definition, and the one we're going to be focusing on, is insight is the unconscious restructuring of a problem or concept. And through this process, you then receive a conscious message, often a realization of something important. So this definition of insight is that sudden aha or eureka moment you experience when faced with a perplexing challenge. And it's important to understand that this is not a deliberate, analytical, or laborious process. You're not using logical reasoning. You're working unconsciously, not consciously. And the restructuring of the problem that you're faced with happens unconsciously, and then you experience a conscious message. So now this is where it gets interesting. Those two definitions of insight actually connect quite deeply. So I'll use human nature as the example. So if we look at the second definition, insight as that aha moment when you receive an insight about the true nature of a person you're analyzing, you're simultaneously developing the depth of your understanding of human nature, which is the first definition. Does that make sense? That sudden insight gives you a richer understanding, not just of that person, but of who people are in general. And because your understanding of human nature is deepened via that second definition of insight, it gives you a wider platform to receive even more insights in the future. And so the cycle repeats. So definition 2 leads to definition 1, and definition 1 leads back to definition 2. Insight builds insight in this case. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so there's 5 key features of insights. And these are the 5 features that basically validate if you're having an insight. Number 1, there has to be unconscious processing. Number 2, there has to be a sudden conscious delivery, that aha moment. Number 3, it has to be articulable. So a real insight can be explained, or at least conceptually shown, which shows that the problem has actually been restructured. Number 4, there's usually a sense of certainty, a strong feeling of confidence that the insight was correct. And number 5, there's a positive affect, a sense of pleasure that arises reflecting the brain's reward systems. Okay, so what happens unconsciously during insight? Like what happens to your mind? Typically one of 3 things. Number 1 is selective encoding. So selective encoding is reclassifying what you've been ignoring as relevant under a new frame. So an example of this would be Sherlock Holmes using evidence he overlooked in the past and suddenly realizing that it's relevant to the structure of the case he's trying to solve. That key aha moment is that past evidence becoming imperative once the correct structure is in place. Like the evidence didn't change at all, only his interpretation of the evidence became relevant. So the second one is selective combination. And selective combination is taking variables of a problem and then classifying those variables into a non-obvious framework that you were overlooking. An example of this would be Hannibal Lecter realizing that Will Graham has pure empathy disorder due to certain behavioral patterns and variables he was overlooking at first. So the key insight to this is the classification of a personality disorder. The aha moment isn't a new variable or behavior, it's a sudden realization that existing behaviors form a coherent psychological structure. So in this case, the framework is a personality disorder. Do you see that? You see how there's multiple things that go into a personality disorder? That's the insight moment when you take separate variables and combine them into another higher order framework, in this case personality disorders. So the third one is selective comparison, and selective comparison is making a targeted connection to prior knowledge, sort of like a micro analogy that clarifies what to do next. So a good example of this would be Akiyama Shinichi from Liar Game associating the game of musical chairs with the Three Kingdoms era, implying the importance of alliances and resource management. The insight here isn't the historical analogy itself, but it's selectively borrowing the relevant strategic principles of the Three Kingdoms era that explain how to win the game of musical chairs. That's what's going on here unconsciously. That's the insight here. And so these three processes happen entirely unconsciously. You don't deliberately choose to selectively encode, combine, or compare. No, your unconscious mind does the work for you, and you experience only the result. That's an aha moment. Only happens when you restructure your understanding back into consciousness. And each of these breakthroughs, remember, it deepens your overall insight, meaning the insight in the first sense, the depth of understanding. Remember, insight leads to insight. Okay, so now let's talk about intuition. So intuition is essentially unconscious pattern recognition. It occurs from a combination of experience and knowledge, creating unconscious shortcuts that produce rapid judgments and feelings. So intuition manifests in bodily sensations, gut feelings, unease, attraction, or maybe aversion. And it only develops in areas of genuine experience. This is where you can really trust your intuition. It's domain specific, which is why your intuition is strongest in the areas you are most skilled and experienced in. And for the most part, intuition is effortless, emotional, and associative. It's not the best marker to rely on for complex decision making or problem solving, but there are situations where it can be quite valuable and endearing for a human being. Intuition, for example, helps you read human beings and protect yourself from potential harm. And it works best in high validity environments. That's where patterns are stable and learnable, such as chess or firefighting. And the opposite would be the stock market. You don't want to use your intuition to make a decision in the stock market, for example. And some of these environments include, immediate feedback and learning from mistakes. That's where intuition is at its best, because you can sort of decipher the intuition itself. You can be like, oh, actually, this was a good intuition. And then when honed correctly, intuition can genuinely become a powerful cognitive advantage because of its quick pattern recognition and its ability to guide and make sense of complex things, because it provides a sense of that understanding that logical reasoning can't quite fathom. The spiritual or divine understanding of something. And the interesting thing is, intuition is also valuable for imagination and creativity. It can guide us towards the archaic symbols we are unconsciously drawn towards. And it can reveal aspects of our habitual nature that we can't quite articulate, right away at least. And in the cases of that domain-specific dominance, detectives, right, like L. Lawlett, Sherlock Holmes, and Patrick Jane, demonstrate a strong and accurate use of intuition. They often sense inconsistencies, danger of deception, long before they can explain why. In that split second, because of their intuition is so strong, they can trust and validate it because they have so much experience. Remember, great intuition is directly correlated with tremendous experience. And so you can really trust your intuition when you have astute experience of that topic, domain, or concept. Okay, so a final clarification for both insight and intuition is that both involve unconscious processing. The difference is that the unconscious is what the unconscious is doing and what reaches consciousness. Insight restructures the problem. You see a new mental model and you can explain it. Intuition matches patterns. You feel something without really being able to articulate why. Insight delivers understanding. Intuition delivers sort of gut feelings, signals, maybe perceptions. Insight can occur in any domain. It doesn't matter what experience, place, or setting you're in, or what concept you're looking to tackle. Insight can cover every domain. Where intuition, remember, requires a deep, domain-specific experience and understanding. And insight feels more cognitive, right? Where intuition feels more embodied. There's more gut reactions and emotional cues when dealing with intuition. And again, both are extremely remarkable in terms of what they can provide us cognitively, spiritually, emotionally, and just to understand and navigate the world around us. Both help us grasp the concepts, the complicated concepts that we're faced with within the world. Obviously, insight is more important for that cognitive understanding and problem solving, where intuition is more subjective, more personal, and whatnot. But both are equally important, I would say. So I hope you guys can understand the two better now. I hope you can differentiate why they're both important and the key differences. And I wonder if you guys learned what you tend to use more. Are you more of an insight person? Are you more intuition? Or are you someone that can utilize both? So I hope all of this made sense. And it was quite complicated because I did read a lot of studies about intuition and insight, and I try to sort of jam pack the information the most comprehensively I could. But yeah, that's going to be it. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them. Take care.